Hello everyone, I'm Matthias, and today we're going to talk about how investors should gauge Novo Nordisk long-term value creation. As Danish viewers of my channel are well aware, I am a huge Novo Nordisk investor. I have 20% of my portfolio in Novo Nordisk, and I am down by a lot on this position. So while it seems like the short-term sentiment has shifted in this company, I still do have some remarks to make. I don't think you should measure the success of the Novo Nordisk case on the short-term price action. What this does is that it puts the success and it puts the measurement of your investment success in the hands of other people. What you should have is other long-term value creation processes that you can measure the success of your investment upon. So what we see here is Novo Nordisk trading up about 20% in the last month due to shifts in sentiment based on this Wegovy pill being accepted by the FDA. What we also did see in December was the company trading down massively on basically a non-event. What happened was the company traded down because of this Alzheimer data not being good enough. This was a non-event for the company's long-term value creation. This was a non-event for the company's core value creations. But what then happened was that the general investor base in Novo Nordisk said that this was a non-event. This doesn't mean anything for the long-term value creation for the company. But what we then have here in the last month is the opposite happening. Also somewhat of a non-event. Obviously, I do know that this Wegovy pill does change a lot for Novo Nordisk, right? So it does offer them a new revenue stream, but most of us did know that this pill would get approved. Most of us knew this, and the stock has traded up by 20%. We've seen this before. We've seen the stock trading up and down quite dramatically a lot of times. This is not new to Novo Nordisk. We saw it in about 400 kroner in September this year, again falling down. So what you have is a lot of investors measuring the success of their Novo Nordisk investment based on short-term price action, while you should have some long-term value creation processes that you can track. And in today's video, I'm gonna cover 3 ways of measuring Novo Nordisk long-term success in my opinion. So now these ways of measuring the company's success are basically taking into account their expansion of their production capacity, while also looking at their ability to expand the obesity market, meeting the demand, while also succeeding on their pipeline. So these 3 processes, when these 3 things succeed, Novo Nordisk will create value and the share price will take care of itself. So while the company's stock is down, this actually is a good thing for you as an investor. So what we can see here is Novo Nordisk shares outstanding. What we see is a huge decline in the overall amount and number of shares outstanding in this company. What the depressed market price does and means for you as an investor is that this company can purchase back more shares, giving you more ownership of the company. So in the short term, basically the price staying stagnant and falling and declining, being low is a very, very good thing. In the longer term, you would like to see these 3 value creation processes driving the growth for this company, not just short-term price action. So obviously, while I am aware that this Wegovy pill is a huge deal for Novo Nordisk, please do not confuse the share price movements with the value of the overall company. Please do not confuse these things. These 3 drivers going up simultaneously will mean that the free cash flow will increase for Novo Nordisk. They will meet more patients. They will have better products. Do not measure your success on the short-term price action. What this really reminds me of is this classic Jeff Bezos clip, and I'm going to show you once again. So Jeff Bezos talks about the qualitative measures of Amazon's value creation going up while the share price is going down. I think the same has been the case for Novo Nordisk. The same has been the case for this wonderful company where the internal value creation processes have gone up dramatically while the share price is down dramatically as well.
The stock is not the company, and the company is not the stock. And so as I watched the stock fall from 113 to 6, I was also watching all of our internal business metrics, number of customers, profit per unit, every single thing about the business was getting better and fast. And so as the stock price was going the wrong way, everything inside the company was going the right way.
So what you have is investors confusing how to measure the success of their investment. Obviously, you want the share price to appreciate over time. I am aware. I don't invest for companies to stay stagnant. But what it should do is following the core fundamentals of the company. In the long term, they will do this. In the short term, all this negativity and market sentiment does dominate price. And we've seen this. As a Novo Nordisk investor, I am used to negative sentiment while also keeping track of the company's value creation going up, measuring it in these three ways. Now, obviously, they have lacked in expanding the market in America. They have sort of fallen behind Eli Lilly, but this has been the case for the last 100 years. These two companies have competed. These two companies have gone head to head, and there have been periods where Novo Nordisk have had a superior product, and then Eli Lilly came in with another superior product. And this is just the balance between these two. They make each other better. They are a duopoly. So now, in order to gauge Novo Nordisk value creation, I look at these three things. First of all, I look at their ability to expand their production capacity. We have experienced periodic shortages in their drugs. Now, obviously, investing in new fill sites does mitigate this. Building their production in Brazil, in other parts of the world, in the US, does mitigate this. Purchasing all these fill plants does mitigate this. They bought Catalent and now they have three more fill sites worldwide. Also, expanding the obesity drug market. The total addressable market for obesity will be around 1 billion people in 2030. These are Novo Nordisk numbers. Doing what they can to sort of meet the market demand will increase their value creation. They have lacked in this in the United States, being overtaken by Eli Lilly. Now, this doesn't mean that status quo is forever. Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly have battled and dueled for the number one spot in diabetes and insulin for 100 years. This will be the same case for obesity. Just because Eli Lilly is the dominant one now and is growing faster now doesn't mean that that will be the case forever. The obesity pill is another growth driver for Novo Nordisk, but it's not a complete game changer. And the final thing is the success of their pipeline. What we see now is the Novo Nordisk pipeline succeeding. We have CagriSema, we have the obesity pill coming out, and we see huge success with this. The Novo Nordisk pipeline is an enormously huge, valuable growth driver for the future. We'll take a look at that. But first of all, I'm going to show you some clips talking about Novo Nordisk having the need to expand their production capacity.
In closing, I'd like to reiterate that during 2024, we have continued to grow our business, serve more patients than ever before, and expanded our pipeline in depth and breadth for long-term growth. Despite periodic supply constraints, we are devoted to expanding our supply capacity in a scalable and gradual manner.
So what we have is a company experiencing temporary shortages. Now, purchasing the three Catalent fill sites does mitigate this issue. They're also quite heavily expanding their production capacity. We'll take a look now on Qualtrim. Now, what we see here is the dollar amount of Novo Nordisk capital expenditures. So they are heavily investing in expanding their pipeline, purchasing other companies' pipelines, while also increasing their production capacity. We saw them purchasing Catalent in 2024. We've seen them heavily investing into production in the US, leading to this graph, leading to their capital expenditures in a dollar amount increasing dramatically quarter over quarter, year over year. So what you have in turn is this sort of free cash flow being highly affected by this company's capital expenditures. But what you can see is a huge acceleration of their free cash flow after the release of their obesity drugs. We all are well aware of this, right? A better way to gauge this is their net income. Here we can see how much this really does affect the company's earnings. But the issue is that this has been declining for a while. So they've had issues meeting the market. First of all, they were supply constrained, being the reason why they did invest so heavily in production, being the reason why they do invest so heavily in expanding their capacity in Brazil, in the US, as I mentioned, right? But what you also have is short-term headwinds in the US becoming an issue with their ability to sell to new customers because Eli Lilly and Zepbound is sort of winning this market right now. So that's why the net income has decreased for the last couple of quarters, as well as their revenue. What you have is a short-term issue. This is not the first time this has happened. If you study this graph of their revenue, right, this is a usual thing. They do not quarter over quarter constantly improve their sales. This is because they are supply constrained. This is because of the nature of the competition, right? Why you have a company that has increased its capital expenditures by a lot, what we see now is them actually slowly decreasing their capital expenditures. Let's hear what the management has to say about this.
CapEx estimates coming down, linked to changes to our CapEx program overall, some optimization there. So a lower CapEx run rate this year, and we are looking into over the coming years that our CapEx run rate will be coming down as we gradually are finalizing our major CapEx initiatives, both on the API front as well as on fill finish.
So in due time, what we will see is an acceleration of Novo Nordisk free cash flow production because they just spent less on their production sites. It is to a way less degree necessary for them to spend so much on their production capacity. So overall, Novo Nordisk is addressing this measurement of value creation. So what we can see is this box actually being ticked right now. Now, as I did mention, expanding the obesity drug market, what they do is increase the amount of drugs they have available. We see this with their Wegovy pill. We see this with Ozempic, Wegovy. So in terms of the company's revenue situation, we have Wegovy increasing its total share of sales, while Ozempic is decreasing in its total percentage of sales. So what you have is revenues sort of declining or staling until Wegovy will carry the sales. So obviously what we have is a lower revenue as a result of this. But Wegovy is boasting double-digit growth, while Ozempic is sort of tapering off. But we still see the obesity market overall growing by quite a lot. So what we can see here is the GLP-1 market size growth growing 39% from last year to this year. So from August 2024 to August 2025, with Novo Nordisk market share declining from 59% to 50%, while the market size is growing overall. So while Eli Lilly is gaining in market share, Novo Nordisk is still increasing their sales. Novo Nordisk is still selling to a high degree, but they just have to share this huge market with other players. But what we see is it is not an issue of how many players there are. It is an issue of the amount of production capacity you have. Novo Nordisk, as we looked at previously, are addressing these issues. They are increasing their production capacity. So as it says here, as this slide shows, the market is immense. The market is huge. Only around 1% of the total market share is being treated right now. With over 900 million people living with obesity, this market is only gaining in size. This market is only increasing. So this is why it's important to measure Novo Nordisk and their ability to sort of meet this market. How well are they positioned to meet this market? Increasing their production capacity really does help them doing this because this market is so enormous. They'll probably have to invest heavily into it going into the future. But what we have is a company increasing their ability to serve this demand, their ability to meet the demand with supply. And we're only dealing with a very, very few percentage points of the overall total addressable market being addressed. So while you have investors looking at the market price, looking at the movements and measuring their success in terms of the investment on this parameter, what I want to offer you, and as I've said multiple times throughout this video, is just the more qualitative long-term growers of value of this company. Now, what we see is Eli Lilly's share price going down, but Eli Lilly will probably release their oral pill form this year or next year. So what we have is another situation where this could possibly negatively impact Novo Nordisk's share price, while not negatively impacting their long-term value creation drivers. Now, in terms of expanding their obesity drug market, they have managed doing this while meeting it. Of course, the Ozempic sales is tapering off, while their Wegovy sales is going at a high speed, double-digit speed. So finally, what you should measure them on is the success of their pipeline. What we have seen in the last couple of days is the share price reacting very, very positively to Novo Nordisk's success on their pipeline with the oral Wegovy pill. But what we have under this is a network of a lot of different drugs, a lot of different sorts of treatment. And Novo Nordisk is positioning themselves to meet this market with high amounts of synergies. So the issue with obesity is that it has a lot of diseases that follow it, such as MASH, liver disease, other rare diseases, diabetes, all these long-term issues for health. Novo Nordisk is meeting and solving all these issues, creating a drug pipeline to sort of meet this ecosystem of issues surrounding obesity, surrounding diabetes and such. So, as it says here, the pipeline supports significant growth opportunities across all four strategic focus areas. What we have is an ecosystem of illnesses that Novo Nordisk is seeking to address. We recently saw the oral pill being approved. So this is Novo Nordisk succeeding on their pipeline. But what we also do have is CagriSema, with around 22.7% weight loss in around, I think, was 70 weeks. So it offers a huge percentage of weight loss while also having good balance in terms of the issues you have when you take these drugs. I don't remember the word. So what we have is CagriSema, we have their amycretin, both in terms of the oral pill form and the injectable one. So and also amylin, which is an interesting way of losing weight, which offers a very interesting alternative to semaglutide in terms of the hunger you feel and in terms of appetite, right? So the thing is that they're creating an ecosystem, they're creating the full stack, they're really doing this, and they're really creating some wide assortment of offerings combating this highly synergistic sort of illness, which is obesity, diabetes. So please, when you want to measure your success in your investment, do not just look at the share price. This will mislead you, this will misguide you. My suggestion is that you should look at these three things. Now, that being said, I'm not a financial advisor. This is no financial advice. You should do your own research on Novo Nordisk. You should do your own research on any company I talk about. This is not purchasing or selling advice. This isn't financial advice. With that being said, I hope this video has offered you three interesting ways of tracking your success in the Novo Nordisk investment case. Hopefully this has expanded your view of the company, and hopefully I've provided some insights into why this company has been a broken stock but not a broken company. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you next time.